Imagine that in the greatest chaos of life, amidst misunderstanding, illness, and inner struggles, there is a space where everything becomes quiet. A space where you don't feel the need to prove, defend, or fight. You just are, and suddenly you know. Today's story is not about answers from the outside, but about the power that grows deep within. It's about the silence that can't be heard with your ears, and the love that has no beginning and no end. Open yourself to the words that do not come from reason, but from the experience of the soul. Welcome to the space where true transformation is born. The silence did not approach me like thunder or wind. It didn't come with a bang, it didn't break down the door of my mind. More like a ray of sunshine that finds a crack between the curtains and touches your face when you no longer even want it. Silence is a gift, but it is a gift we receive only when everything else makes us tired, hurt, or disappointed. And love? It was like an invisible river before me. For a long time it flowed in me, through me. But I looked out on the desert and told myself that the world was dry, hard, and unforgiving. It took me many years to understand that love cannot be seen if our hearts are closed, and silence cannot be heard if we feed on the noise of the world within us. There were times when I looked for answers in words, books, people. I used to think that understanding would come from outside. Like pouring ink into a glass of water, suddenly the color is different, the thing has changed. But truth doesn't pour into the mind. Truth is revealed when we stop looking. One day, exhausted by inner struggle and dissatisfaction, I sat down in the silence of the room, closed my eyes, and wanted nothing. And that's when it happened. A deep inner peace emerged that I had not known until that moment. Not as a thought, not as an emotion. Just pure being, without name, without form. The silence embraced me, and in it I heard what had always been in me: love. When I was younger, I used to get angry a lot. At myself, at the world, at other people. I thought anger gave me strength, protected me from humiliation, weakness, betrayal. But anger is like a fire in the wrong fireplace. At first it warms, but soon it begins to suffocate and destroy. When I first encountered an illness that the doctors could not explain, I understood that my body spoke the language of the soul. The things I refused to acknowledge in myself became pain, inflammation, pressure. One day I realized that the anger I had been nurturing inside me against my father was like a knot in my stomach, tight, unwilling to loosen. And so I decided I would forgive. But forgiveness is not an act of a moment. It is a process, a journey that leads through an inner acceptance of pain and one's own imperfection. When I first felt compassion within myself, not for him, but for myself, as I had lived for years with the weight of anger, the knot began to loosen. And that's when I learned that true strength comes not from hardness, but from gentleness. From the silence that allows the soul's cries to be heard, and from the love that makes room for change. I once had an argument with a colleague. In retrospect, it looks ridiculous. It was a work misunderstanding, a few harsh words, and bruised ego. But at the time, it seemed like the insult of a lifetime. I couldn't sleep that night. Thoughts, regrets, revenge scenarios ran through my head. And then I realized, what level of consciousness am I in right now? What is speaking out of me right now? And where is it taking me? With each thought of revenge, I sank deeper. The darkening of my mind, the pressure in my chest, the tension in my body. Like I was steering myself into a storm. And then I did something that changed my life. I opened my heart, not to the outside, not to him, to myself. I admitted to myself that I felt threatened, inferior, overlooked. And when I accepted those emotions without shame or rejection, they began to disappear. In the morning, I shook his hand and said, "I'm sorry." That's all. And he, a man who the day before had been filled with remorse, hugged me. In that moment, I understood the power of love. It's silent, invisible, but it can change reality. Love is not an emotion. It is a state of being. People often confuse it with attraction, caring, belonging. But these are all shadows. Real love is like a light that doesn't shine on something, but is itself the source. It doesn't want, it doesn't demand, it doesn't cling. It just is. And the more I came to know this love, the more I saw how I had resisted it for so long. The merit of pride. Pride is a strange energy. It masquerades as dignity, but it's really a defensive bulwark that hides fear. Fear of not being enough. That if we take off the mask, the world will crush us. As I sat at my sick mother's bedside one day and watched her suffer, it dawned on me how powerless pride is in the face of pain. It doesn't help, it doesn't protect, it doesn't alleviate. It only keeps us from being close. And so I laid her at the feet of life. I sat in silence beside her bed and just held her hand. I didn't say anything. And in the silence between us, something greater than words emerged. The knowledge that we were connected not just as mother and son, but as souls sharing a common journey. It was one of the purest forms of love I have ever experienced. Quiet, gentle, unpretentious, and yet all-encompassing. Since then, I have tried to start each day with quiet listening. Not to the world, not to my surroundings, to myself. Silence is not the absence of sound, it is the presence of perception. In silence I hear what my body, soul and life are telling me. And the more I immerse myself in this inner space, the more I feel that I am not separate from others. That every conflict, every pain, every restlessness outside has its root in me. And when I heal it within myself, the world around me changes. People often ask how to change the world. I believe the world changes through our inner levels of consciousness. If I act from a level of fear, anger or pride, I bring pain even if unconsciously. But if I find peace, compassion and respect for life within myself, I bring light. Not by what I say, but by what I am. Be still as a dove, says an old book. And another says, he who sees all things alike in friend, in foe, in self sees truly. These are not just poetic words. They are maps. Maps to silence and to love. To the invisible power that is within each of us. Today I no longer look for meaning in life in goals or results. I believe that the meaning of life is to live in a state where love is present even when things don't go well, even when others don't understand, even when everything outside fails. I believe the only real change comes from within, and that even though my journey is winding, painful and often incomprehensible, it has a deep order. Silence taught me to listen, love taught me to live, not for myself, not against others but with them, in a oneness that requires no consent, only presence. And if at the end of it all I have only one thing to say, accept silence. Accept love, not as a concept, not as a guide, but as a breath that flows through you. And be still, because the real power is not in what we can change on the outside, but in what we allow to change on the inside. You may be going through pain, confusion, or just looking for peace in the hustle and bustle of everyday life right now. And maybe you've realized that the most valuable thing you can do is to quiet yourself and allow love to guide you. Not right away, not easily, but with the belief that every open heart changes the whole world. Thank you for being here today. If this story spoke to you, leave a comment or share the video with someone who is currently seeking the light. And remember, silence is not a void, it's where the soul finally breathes.